Hey guys, I hope you're having a good end to your 2019 year. I hope you're meeting all of your goals, or better yet, you're exceeding them. But if you're not, I want to hear from you. I want this podcast to not only deliver value to you every week in the form of interviews and content that I provide to you, but I want to make sure that that content and those interviews are focused on the subjects and the challenges that you guys want to talk about and you guys want to know about. So if you could do me a quick favor, shoot me an email at mike@juststartrealestate.com. Make the subject line help. Tell me what you're struggling with. Tell me what you would like me to talk about on this podcast next year, and I will make sure that I turn this podcast into a machine that just cranks out information that is critical to you and your business and getting you to where you want to be in 2019. So shoot me an email at mike@juststartrealestate.com, subject line help, and I will make sure that the content that I'm providing you is geared toward what you need. Also, if you want to get on the phone with me and just chat for a few minutes and kind of share with me what's happening in your business and see if I can help in any way, I would be very happy to do that. You can do it the same way. Shoot me an email, subject line help, and just tell me, hey, Mike, I'd like to hop on the phone and just talk and see if there's something you can do to help me with my business, and we'll do that. So look forward to hearing from you, and let's go ahead and dive into what I think is going to be maybe the best show I've done in maybe years. It's fantastic. So let's get into it now.
You know, I talk about that. I teach it. I wrote about it. It's out there, right? Yeah. And people are like, oh, you know, is it okay if I copy it? I'm like, it's not copywritten. Like, how would I know? Like, of course, use it. You know, it works, right?
Yeah.
This is all about, you know, you spent the $15 or $20 or whatever for the book. And this is you shortening your learning curve. That's what you spent that $20 for.
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
All right, guys, thank you for joining me on Just Start Real Estate. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here and choosing to spend time with me as opposed to all the other places you could be spending your time. So thank you for that, and I am so excited for this show. I don't even want to hold off for one more second because the guest that I have on today is Susan Lassiter-Lyons. And for those of you in real estate who are trying to raise money for deals, find private investors, and basically just eliminate the money excuse from your reasons why you don't think you can succeed or you haven't succeeded at the level that you have wanted to this point, all of that gets put to rest with Susan's book called Getting the Money. I have recommended it to dozens and dozens of people, and I know even more people who have gone out and gotten it even before I got to them and have reported back that they've raised hundreds of thousands, in some case millions of dollars, and I have been trying to get Susan on the show, and not that she's been avoiding it by any means, but I have had that goal of getting her on the show for a long time. I reached out to her. She was gracious enough to accept my invitation, and I am psyched to bring you that interview today. So if you don't know who Susan Lassiter-Lyons is, she is an investor, a coach, a serial entrepreneur, and best-selling author who's had a long career in helping people create wealth. I'm going to go through some more of the things that she has done over the last couple of decades. She's the she founded and manages a private equity fund that delivers gains of over $1.1 million to her investors, on average a 12.88 return, advising real estate investors who, as a result of her fundraising framework, have collectively raised more than $400 million in capital since 2004 as a direct result of what she teaches people. She's the founder and editor of Income Investors Academy, a membership site for individual investors seeking double-digit yields in the public and private market. She's also founder and founder and editor of Cannivester's Lab. It's a cannabis investing newsletter and trade alert service. She's the founder and editor of ValueVestor Lab, a value investing newsletter and trade alerts services. Founder and CEO of the Squad Academy, which we talk a little bit about in the interview. It's a full-service content marketing agency specializing in email campaigns, webinars, blogs, and social media. She's also the Amazon number one best-selling author of Getting the Money, which is really what we're focusing on mostly in this interview. Getting the Money is a simple system for getting private money for your real estate deals. She's also the host of Total Returns podcast, a show dedicated to investing tips, tactics, and strategies. She's the founder and leader of One Life CEO, a wealth creation framework and invitation-only mastermind for entrepreneurs, and more than 14 million in online sales facilitated since 2010 from her content marketing strategy, leveraging emails, webinars, and SEO. Wow, it's a mouthful. And that's just what she's done in the last, 10 to 15 years here. She started in 1990 and has done so much in this industry and been involved in so much. But number one, first and foremost, she's helped so many people raise money to eliminate probably the number one excuse people have for not being a real estate investor. I don't have any money. I don't know where there is any money. I don't know anybody with money. All of that she sort of crushes and teaches people how to do it. So without any further ado, I am very pleased to introduce Susan Lassiter-Lyons. Susan, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and be on the podcast. Thanks a lot.
It's my pleasure. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about this. It's, you might know, one of my favorite topics.
I think it is. Unless we were meeting for margaritas at the restaurant, which is escaping me, then this couldn't be more awesome. And I'll tell you, I've interviewed a lot of people. I can't remember anybody I've ever had on in all 355 episodes that I've been more excited about. So thank you very, very much for being on. I know you've changed lives of people you don't even know about that I know of, and people who had that common question, right? Like, I want to do this, but I don't have any money, and I don't know where to find it, and there's nowhere to get money, and you have to have money. So that question alone, you've answered for so many people, and they've raised millions of dollars. And we were talking about before we jumped on here, people you don't even know about. So yeah, thank you for that. And thanks for writing the book, Getting the Money, because it's the Bible, in my opinion, of how you find and raise private money and how you treat people and all that. It's not just about finding it, but it's about how you treat them and your interactions and doing what you say you're going to do, all that stuff. And we'll get into all that. But thank you very much for everything you've done for the community as far as raising money and everything else you've done.
Wow. I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about that for a minute. Do you still get people who, when you talk and travel and do your podcast and things, do you still get people saying, where do I find money for my deals? And do you just go, come on, man, I wrote a book years ago?
I know. And it's fine, because look, I started investing just as a general topic back in 1990. So I've been at this a long time. And I started investing in real estate specifically in 1994. And I realized very quickly, like in about the first 11 seconds, that, I got a big problem here.
Yeah.
I need money. Right. And as we know, right, I know I'm preaching to the choir here and to your listeners as well. It's like investment property loans aren't the easiest to get from traditional banks and lenders, and hard money lenders are going to probably eat into the majority of your profits, and they can be difficult to deal with as well. Mm-hmm. So I had to get a handle on that problem really quickly. So I figured, if I'm having this issue, I guarantee you that everybody else is having this issue as well. So I just set about solving my own problem, documented exactly how I did that. And then, people see that you have solved something and everybody wants to know how you did it. And so it was just kind of easier for me, like you say, instead of answering everybody one-on-one, to write a book. And then I could say, hey, we'll just, hop over to Amazon, grab the book, and that'll tell you literally every single thing that I do and how I do it.
Totally.
And I can't tell you how many times I've read books like this, people who try to solve a problem or explain a strategy in real estate, and you read the book and it's like they left out everything, right? It's just like a giant advertisement that you're reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I made a very I made a very strong decision when I wrote the book that this is going to be the definitive book, and I'm not going to hold anything back, because I'm not going to be like, oh, well, if you want the real secret, you have to pay me $1 million.
Yeah.
No, it's in the book, right?
Yep.
Just get the book, do what I say in the book. And that's what I do, right? So to answer your question, yeah, I do still get people coming up saying, hey, how do you do it? And so I do refer them to the book. But then the interesting thing that happens is I get people who haven't read the book who say, okay, well, I'm sure you don't reveal everything in the book.
Yeah.
So tell me what the real secret is. And I'm like, dude, the real secret's in the book.
Yep, no doubt about it. And the funny thing too is one of the concepts, or one of the I'll say revelation, but it shouldn't be, but it is, that you talk about early on in the book, is that that real estate's a relationship thing, and you call it relationship financing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the biggest things is people go, well, I'm not a big company. Like, I'm not this big nameless, faceless organization. Why would they trust me? And it's like, no, that's why they trust you, because people loan. I've said this to people before, and you've said it in your book as well. You've gotten money from lenders who, on paper, maybe you weren't the one they should have lent to because you didn't have all the experience and you weren't polished or whatever, but they liked you and they identify with you and they want to work with you because on a personal level, they connect with you somehow. And I've gotten more money. I've raised more money that way, like by just people liking me or liking my wife more likely, but identifying with us a little bit. We had a lender one time that said, you know why we lent you money? We were in a room with investors that had far more experience back when I started. And they said, the reason we invested with you is purely because you and your wife remind me of my wife and I, 25 years ago or 30 years ago. And so we want to work with you guys. And it's like, it's not about what I knew at the time. I didn't know anything really. I was just like telling them what I wanted to do. So can you talk a little bit about that relationship financing and what that means for you?
Yeah, and I love you sharing that story, because that happens so often. And it's happened to me, and it's happened to countless other people that I've chatted with about this process as well. So relationship financing is just a term that I kind of coined, to talk about this whole topic of kind of going outside of the traditional banking relationships and the banking products and programs that are available for mortgage lending and real estate, and bringing it probably more into the sphere of what it used to be back in the olden days. And I mean the real olden days, not the internet olden days, right? Like when, you needed a loan, and you kind of went to the people in your village, right? Or you went to the people in your town, and, it was kind of like a credit union community banking mentality that is kind of trying to make a comeback now, because, we have this kind of anti-corporate globalism thing going on. And so people are trying to get smaller, which I think is great for this specific thing that we're talking about. And so I just really wanted to kind of give a name to this concept of, you need to get away from like those traditional mainstream approaches, because they're not built for us.
Yeah.
They're not built for us. They're not built for the newbie investor. They're not built for the person who, doesn't get a W-2, right? I mean, it just doesn't work for so many reasons. So, when we started working with private money partners, and that is the second piece of this that I want to talk about, right? I don't look at them as lenders, because it's very much a relationship. It's relationship financing. And when we're developing this relationship with lenders, I can't look at them and say, oh, well, this is my private money lender, right? Because then I'm doing two things that are kind of wrong from a psychological perspective. I'm kind of putting them in like this corporate box, right? There's going to be this separation between us. Like, you're going to be the lender and I'm going to be the borrower. And we have to have this real, corporate type of relationship. The other thing that it does is, when we call them a lender, it puts the real estate investor, it puts us in this weird subservient mindset, right? That they're the ones with the money, they're the ones with all the power, and they're the ones with all the control. When you and I both know that nothing could be further from the truth.
Yep.
We're in control, right? They are very much our investor. And to me, they are very much our private money partner. So when I started just even changing that one word in the vernacular, just in the way that I describe that relationship, and started talking about them as private money partners as opposed to lenders, boom, then all of a sudden our mindset changes. So now I'm not out like asking someone if I can quote unquote borrow money from them. Now I'm out there saying, hey, I'd like to share with you an opportunity to make money with me
Yep.
and for you to leverage our relationship for profit. It's a very different conversation, and it's huge for your mindset.
It's huge for your mindset. It's so important. It's so true. You mentioned in the book at some point where it's one of the rules of things that you can do wrong when you're talking, but it's basically that, like, you're out looking for money. Like, I need a loan. I need someone. And that desperation just stinks, and people smell it a mile away. And really, it's not even so much of just like psychologically, let's position myself as the prize, which you talk about too, but it's like, believe it, because you are, they can't do what you're doing in this relationship. They can't do it. They may have the money, but that's it. They don't have the ability to do the things that you're doing in terms of finding houses and all that, which is really important. And it's a huge mindset shift. And honestly, I have found it takes more than one conversation with people to get them to really buy into that concept, because they go, oh yeah, I'm the prize. And then they're like, I hope someone will give me money, So it's like you're going back into that desperation, like, please help me. And it looks weak, and it's not attractive to anybody. It's just like when you go to a bar to meet somebody, if you're desperate, good luck. It just doesn't work that well. Confidence is attractive in all phases of life. So I think that's huge. You brought up a concept. It's something really funny, and I'll keep it short because I'm not the guest here, but the secret identity thing is so spot on to what I did when I got into real estate, my wife and I. We didn't tell our family. And we didn't tell our kids, we didn't tell our parents, we didn't tell our friends, we didn't tell anybody until we're successful, we're not going to tell anybody, because in our minds, we were like so fragile that if someone came at us hard with how stupid we were, we might falter, like we might actually maybe stop. So the real funny ending of this is we didn't tell anybody. But at one point when we had flipped a few houses and we were kind of like at RIAs and things, and I had this Facebook business page, the local, I'm in the Metro Detroit area, the local, like the biggest newspaper in Metro Detroit contacted me and said, hey, we're doing this article on investors. And it was like 2009. We're doing this article on investors. Would you be interested in being interviewed? I'm like, sure, no problem. Figured it's going to be a blurb on page, 1, Z or, 7Z of the paper, and no one will ever see it. Next thing you know, front page Sunday morning paper. Our faces, our picture, this big article. And I went to my parents' house for dinner that day, my wife and I, and they hadn't gotten the paper yet. And the phone rings and my mom goes, they're what? What are you talking about? They're sitting right here. What do you mean they're on the front page of the... And that's how my family found out we were flipping houses, because we were featured on the front page of the local paper. It's like crazy. So I was like,
that's hilarious.
Cat's out of the bag. Yeah, it was just nuts. It was not... We didn't mean to do it that way, obviously, but at least it's like, surprise, we're flipping houses and we're being interviewed for it. So... Anyways, but that secret identity thing, the way I found money, and I didn't have your book when I started, so the way I found money and the advice I got, which was sound, and you talk about this too, is that whole secret identity. It's when I started putting what we were doing on the internet, specifically Facebook at that time, people started coming to us like, hey, how do we get involved? Like, I want to be a lender, or I want to be a partner with you. Like, I want to get on this ride that you're on. It looks really awesome. And I had, at that point, hadn't done much at all. Like, people were just coming to us and throwing money. So that secret identity thing really hit home with me. And it was just, I think a lot of people do it because they don't want to hear the naysayers. So they just keep it. But that's hurting you in terms of raising money.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. It really is. It's, I love the way you phrase it, that, you were so fragile in it that you were afraid, one wrong word and you guys were just going to give it up. And I get it. I've been there too, in a lot of different things. And I think that's something that resonates with everyone. And so you have to kind of walk that fine line between wanting to protect your dream and wanting everybody to know, because fundamentally the people who like you, know you, trust you, have an innate desire to want to help you. Yeah. Right. Yep. So what you're doing by kind of hiding behind this secret identity, right? Hiding your secret identity is like, you're not allowing people to do what they do best. And that's help you, right? To connect you with people that can help you, or to bring money to your company, or to, hey, my neighbor is selling their house and can you help them? All these types of things happen magically, right? When people just know what the heck it is that you're doing. And I get it. I understand the reason why people do it, but sometimes I just want to shake them and, if I'm being honest, maybe even give them a nice little uppercut, and say, snap out of it.
Exactly.
And just like let everybody know, because seriously, that's how you get the best stuff. It's something that I used to talk about, and I don't really talk about it much anymore, but it's exactly this. I used to call it the cognoscente method. And it just means, cognoscente is a word that means expert. And so people used to come to me and say, well, Susan, how do you get all these really great real estate deals? How do you market for them? And I'm like, I don't, right? All I do is tell people what I'm doing online, and then they're automatically attracted to that. It's that alignment. If people see the energy and see the activity and see the results and see the outcomes that you're getting, and honestly, like see the excitement and the passion that you bring to it, they just want to be a part of it any way that they can. And they're going to do whatever they can to help.
Are you still, this is a side note, but are you still like doing deals? Or is it all like syndication, bigger stuff, kind of an investor or brokering money? Or are you like finding houses and buying them to hold or flipping them or wholesaling or doing any of that kind of stuff? Is that part of your current strategy?
Currently, I don't do any residential at all. Okay. And I should probably zoom out. I don't do any active real estate investing anymore. Okay. So I don't have any residential, holdings like a mom and pop landlord. I don't do flips. Honestly, I live in Southern California and I just want to play tennis. So that's the real truth.
Yeah, no, I get it. And that's sort of the goal, right? We don't want to always be like, I got to get out there and get that next deal or I'm not going to be able to eat. Like, that's not really the point. I don't think anybody goes into it with that in mind.
No. And so I made a decision a couple of years ago that I was going to get away from all forms of what I call active investing and just go to true passive investing. And for me on the real estate side, it comes down to a couple of things. Number one, diversification. Mm-hmm. And number two, passive. So I wanted to make sure that my overall portfolio was as diverse as it possibly could be, because a lot of us got caught kind of with our pants down around 2007, 2008, way over leveraged in real estate. And so I immediately got rid of all my residential holdings and focused just on at that time, multifamily syndication, because I was able to leverage my skill set right into deals. People, because the problems that the smaller investors have and the newbie investors have when they're trying to raise $100,000 or whatever to buy their first house is no different, right, than an experienced investor who's trying to raise $150 million for their next multifamily development project in downtown LA. Right. Everybody needs money. So don't think that just because, you're going to have more experience or you're going to have a bigger portfolio or you're going to be more connected or more skilled at this, that suddenly your money problems are going to disappear forever, because they don't.
Right.
So I have a special skill and I'm able to kind of leverage myself into these larger syndications because I can help people get money, right? I can kind of bring the ability to raise capital, how to structure the private placements appropriately, I've got a lot of hedge fund connections from back in the day that I can, bring other money into just because I say, hey, I'm with these guys. So there's a certain level of expertise, kind of going back to that cognoscente method, right? I have a certain level of expertise that I can bring to a deal, and I can leverage that with very little effort on my part and not bringing a single penny of my own money. So I'm in, I'm done, and then I just kind of sit back and collect the paycheck forever, and that's what I like.
That's awesome. And it kind of dovetails into what I want to talk about next. You talk about don't look at yourself as full-time or part-time, look at yourself as big time in the book, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about, I think, there a little bit. It just don't look at this as a little hobby or something you do. Just if you're going to do it, do it. And shoot a little bit higher than that. And I think that's how people can escape that rat race that we kind of get into when we start. And some people love it. Some people love living that's just, they love it. I've talked to people, and I'm part of a mastermind too. And people go, they want to scale and they want to grow, and I want to have this big business. But they're like, but I love the work inside the house. well, listen, you're only one person, so you can't scale just you, right? You have to bring in a team, and you have to step out of that if you want to own a business that's bigger than just you. But I like that concept of big time. Is that something you did right from the beginning? Were you I know I want to be big time, or did you start off I'm part time and I'm not? I don't tell people I'm an investor. I think you did kind of start that way. Is that accurate or?
It's totally accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was the car rental girl. I went straight to work in the car rental industry when I was I was 19. So I was maybe a sophomore in college, I guess. And, I worked at Dollar Rent-A-Car for 5 years. And then I worked at Hertz for seemed like forever. I think it was only maybe 11 years or so. But for me, the way that it happened was I was working at Hertz and, kind of researching ways to make money. And so we were doing a lot of different things. One of the first things we did, I studied tax lien investing. So I kind of inadvertently did a syndicate where I just went to work and told my friends, all right, everybody, tomorrow bring all of your money and I'm going to take it. And then I'm going to go to the tax lien auction at the county and we're going to buy these tax liens and we're going to make 16% interest. And so how's that sound? And they're all like, okay. So I was like, ooh, that was easy. So we got these 4 liens and 3 of them paid off. And I was like, wow, that was very cool. Right.
Yep.
And then one of them didn't pay off and we ended up applying for the treasurer's deed. And we're the proud owners still of this ridiculous piece of vacant property in the middle of nowhere in Colorado, which is, I keep it as a lesson to always do my due diligence. And then it just kind of mushroomed from there. And I remember thinking, well, this might be a nice part-time thing, right? Because at that point I was all in and on the fast track at Hertz corporate. Yep. I mean, I was gunning to go to corporate, and which I did. And I found myself at the corporate headquarters back east. And then I was on the road for 3 weeks a month. I was a national sales trainer. And so I spent a lot of nights alone in hotel rooms in strange cities, watching weird late night TV. Yeah. And who did I see? Carlton Sheets every night saying how to invest in real estate with no money down. And I'm like, all right, I'll buy off on that. So
did you buy the CDs or the tapes or whatever?
The VHS.
Oh,
tapes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
We're talking about old school now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I got the VHS tapes and started looking at it. And I thought, well, I'm doing all this traveling anyway. I might as well, make it interesting because I have all this time. And then it just kind of mushroomed from there. I ended up leaving Hertz, kind of golden parachuted out of there after we went public. Ford spun us off and I was able to have a nice windfall on the stock and went back home to Colorado, bought a house and went to work for myself and decided I'm going to try and do something in investing. What I realized very quickly was that the investing, fixing and flipping, not for me. I mean, I'm bad at managing a crew, and trust me, nobody wants to live in a house that I personally have removed. Not safe. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
That's funny.
And so I'm like, what can I do? Right? I need to be in this somehow, but I'm not exactly sure how. And it was always about the money, right? So I decided to open up a mortgage company, became a licensed mortgage broker, and my whole mortgage company was focused just on financing and funding for real estate investors. Oh. We didn't do any primary residence mortgages or anything, no second homes. It was all investment. And nice. So because we specialize that way, obviously, we got a lot of clients. And then for what we couldn't fund with regular loan programs, that's what we started raising private money for. Because I was like, hey, I'm doing this for myself. Maybe I could broker some of this private money for you guys too. And then that ended up mushrooming into a full-on private equity hedge fund that I managed for a couple of years. And we were making hard money loans out of that fund.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, it just kind of mushroomed from there. And when I was at Hertz, my God, are you kidding me? I was going to tell my grandmother, oh, grandma, guess what? I'm doing no money down real estate now. She would have been like, no, you're not. Right? You're absolutely not doing that. You're on the corporate track at Hertz. You're going to retire from there with a gold watch and a giant pension. Don't lose focus.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. In real estate, when I finally went full time, I told my wife, if I can save a year's salary, then I want to go full time. And if something doesn't go right, 8 months in, I still have plenty of time to go back and find a job, and we don't have to worry about it. So I did that. I got into real estate later in life. Had some life events derail me, but at the end of the day, I was close to 40 basically, and I'm like, well, I'm going to tell my parents. They're super union, Michigan automotive, pro union kind of a thing. So I took them out to dinner and I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this. And my dad was like, I think you're making a mistake. Like that's, and I had already like crushed it for like 3 or 4 years, and I was like just making money like crazy. It was going well. It's just funny, that mentality. Yeah, it's like, you have a good job. Well, why would you leave it? It's like, well, this is what I want to do. But, just getting into you leaving your job, and we don't have to go into it, but I'll tease the book a little bit. Your story about the sign from God about when you were going to quit your job was awesome. Like, I was laughing out loud when I was reading that. That is so great. And it's so like, listen, I'm not going to get the subtle hint here. So give me something big. So you guys, I'm not even going to tell you what it was, but go read the book. Just to find that story alone is worth it to me. Yeah, as I was going through, by the way, I'm like dog-earing the book, like things that I want to make sure we talk about, highlighting. And it's like, I was like, I can't dog-ear every page. This is stupid. I might as well just read the book on the air. But just lots of great stories. And what I loved about it too is you're so like real. And I know people tell you this, but like you're so relatable. It's like, I don't feel like I'm reading this book of this professor who thinks I'm a moron. It's just like, we're kind of both doing this, and this is what I did. And the way you wrote the book, by the way, I appreciate, because I think I have functional ADD, and it's like the chapters are not that long, but like within the chapters, there's subjects that you break down into like paragraphs. Like, so you kind of feel like you get to this, like this subject or this topic, and you're done with it in like a paragraph. It's so like, you could just speed through this thing. But anyways, that's a little bit of a side note, but I love that.
And thanks for that feedback. And that was by design, by the way, because I think I suffer from that same entrepreneurial ADD that you have. I think a lot of us have it. And it was when I was like working with my editor on the book, I was like, look, I need a way for me to be able to find the stuff, right? So I can't look at a big block of, words and try and pick out the good parts. I'm like, I want very, small paragraphs. I want it to sound exactly like I talk. I don't want somebody to like pick up a book and not be able to get a sense of me in it. Yeah. And I'm glad you made that point of, we're in this together. A lot of people come to me for training and in the past, for real estate coaching, and I'm happy to do it. And I really love that stuff. But there comes a time like, as you get better and better at what you do and more people start coming and people start learning about you, they kind of put you up on like this weird pedestal of like, oh, you're the expert and you've really done it. And right. I remember being at an event one time and like people waited in line to get pictures with me and get autographs. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what is even happening right now? Right. And I was like, people, no. Like, I'm you, right? The only reason why I wrote a book and why you're reading my book to learn from it, and why you're not like where I am right now, is because 2 things. 1, I started a little bit earlier, and 2, I was on a friggin' mission, right, to dial this thing in and to get it done. Yeah. We're all in the same boat, right? Mm-hmm. We've all had to, at some point, we're all going to have the same experiences. My goal with writing the book was to shorten the learning curve and to eliminate some of the yuckier experiences with regard to funding projects. Right. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the quotes that you put at the beginning of the chapters. And there was one, I don't remember what chapter it was, but life begins at the end of your comfort zone. It's so cool. Mm-hmm. It's so great, because I think sometimes people want to do not just finding money, but they want to build a business and they want to have all these things, but it's like, they don't want to change their daily routine. Like, I want to watch Netflix for 5 hours and I just want to hang out with my friends. Like, well, that's fine, but you're never going to get where you want to go. Tell me about, you talk about elevator pitch, and in yours, you mention it. I don't know if this still is, but you mention it a lot in the book, that I put together lucrative real estate deals so my partners make safe, consistent profits. Very succinct, follows a formula. How important it is for people to have that when they go to talk to people about money.
Oh God, it's huge. It's everything. Seriously, it's where it all starts. You have to have something that gets people curious about what they're doing enough to say, hey, tell me more about that. Right. So that kind of mission statement, or really a value statement, you can call it an elevator pitch, you can call it whatever, but right. I kind of call it like a value statement, because that's the value that I put into the world. Right. I do help people do that. It was a way for me to find people who were going to be in alignment with that message and who wanted to learn more, because an interesting thing happens when you say that. And trust me, I've tried all sorts of different versions of this. And when I first started, people were like, so, what do you do? And it was like word vomit. Like I was just reciting War and Peace, and and then the people's eyes were glazing over and they're like looking for a way to run away. And I'm like, oh my God, like I can hear myself talking and even I'm like, what is happening right now? Shut up, quit talking, It's the world's most boring speech.
Yeah.
So I worked on it, and that was, the very dialed in message. And it was just honestly the one that got the best reaction from people. Their head would kind of snap and, they would focus and they'd say, wait a minute, what did you just say? Oh, well, how can I get involved in that? Or how can I be a part of that? Or how exactly do you do that? And so it's just a way to initiate that conversation.
Yeah.
It works really well. And I have a funny story for you with regard to that too.
Okay.
So I was, I talk about that. I teach it. I wrote about it. It's out there. Right.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, is it okay if I copy it? I'm like, it's not copywritten. Like, how would I know? Like, of course, use it. It works, right?
Yeah.
This is all about, you spent the $15 or $20 or whatever for the book. And this is you shortening your learning curve. That's what you spent that $20 for. So anyway, we were living still in Denver. I live in Southern California now, but we were still in Denver and we went to a holiday party, a big kind of fancy soiree. Like, you have to get dressed up and there are fancy people there, blah, blah, blah. So they had it catered and they had a bar. And so I went over to the bar and the bartender was looking at me really funny. And I'm like, what's up with this dude? Right? Like, whatever. Like, He's like, can I help you? I was like, yeah, I'll have a vodka tonic. So he gave me this big smile and he's like, wait right here. And he like runs away. And I'm like, oh, great. Now the bartender's gone. He's, and so I'm like, what is going on? Anyway, he comes back and he hands me his business card. He's a real estate investor. And guess what was printed on the back of that card?
That elevator or that value proposition.
That
Yeah. That's
I was
hilarious.
like, are you kidding me right now? And he's like, can I just hug you? And I was like, yes. So he came around and he hugged me and then he gave me my cocktail and I almost choked because it was like all vodka with like a splash of tonic.
Doing you a solid.
I know. He's like, I gave you like a triple. And I'm like, oh man, you're going to have to call me an Uber too after this. But it's out there and I love it.
That's great. That is so great. God, that's so funny. I love that. So, okay. One thing I get to, like, I want to hear I don't want to predetermine anything here. When people ask you, and I'm sure they probably do, when I talk to an investor, someone who maybe I don't know currently what they're getting as a return and things like that, what terms should I offer? Like, how do you determine? And I'm asking a loaded question because I read the book. So, but how do you determine? Answer. I do know the answer, but I want to hear you say it. How do they know what terms to offer someone, and they don't just blurt out 15% because they know they can. Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah. So it's such a great question. And this is seriously like the number one question that I get. Well, what do I offer them? What do I pay? What percentage? What do I give them? And so the first thing that I ask in response to that question that they ask is, what can the deal afford to pay? Right. So the first level is doing your due diligence and running the numbers on what your investment is to understand deeply, right? Have a real handle on exactly how much you can afford to pay for debt, right?
Yep.
So if you can afford, and I've looked at numbers and these can be very lucrative. And if just because you can afford to pay somebody 15 or 20%, it doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Right. And again, this comes from experience. So a couple of things will happen if you pop off, with this giant number right out of the gate. People are going to think are we allowed to say a bad word on your podcast?
Go for it.
People are going to think you're full of shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So just, they're not going to believe you. They're going to think you're a scammer. And the higher the return that you offer, even if you can pay it, the farther and the faster they're going to run.
Totally. That is such a crazy concept to get into people's heads too. Like, I can pay 15%. People will love it. No, you will scare the hell out of them.
Yeah. Nobody will believe you.
Right.
My own uncle didn't even believe me. He told me no when I told him that. He's like, nice try, kid. I was like, wait, Uncle Bill, come on, man.
Yeah.
I can do it. He's like, yeah, prove it. Right.
Yep.
So the way that I solved this, because again, we're all in this together and I've been down this road, I developed what I call the magic question. And so instead of me leading with what I could pay them, I ask them this question. The money that you're considering investing in my deal, what is it currently earning?
Yep.
And then go from whatever their answer is. So typically the answers are going to be on the very low side.
Shockingly
right?
low. Yeah.
Shockingly low. I've heard everything from, negative percents to like 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%,
Yeah.
whatever. Right. And so if it's low enough, then if I say the money that you're considering investing with me, what's it earning now? And they pop up with 3%. Then I think about it for a minute. And if I come back with my next question, which I do, and I say, okay, 3%, huh? What if I could double it?
Yep.
Then they freak out. But get this, you're paying 6% now for private money.
Exactly. Yeah. And for everyone listening right now, how much would you freak out if you had private money at 6%? People who are using hard money or whatever, like
nuts.
It's crazy. And by the way, you're making that person ecstatic. You've doubled their returns.
You doubled it. They're so happy. And you're so happy, right? Because you're like, dang, I didn't have to give up 15%. I can get by with 6.
Yep.
We had a contest, right, with some people that I was working with, some students, right after getting the money first came out. And it's like, let's use the magic question and then report back and let's see who can pay the lowest interest rate. And the winner still, she hasn't been beaten. Her name is Roberta Eastman. She got private money for 3.55%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So if you could raise capital, you could pay 3.5% for your investment capital. OMG.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the way you do it.
Absolutely.
That's how you make the big bucks. And that's how you scale this business.
How do you tell people to deal with the imposter syndrome, right? Where they go, I don't know anything. Like, why would they give money to me? I'm not good. I don't have experience. Like people who are wrestling with this, I'm nobody kind of a thing.
That's such a great question.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. If I'm being honest, seriously, and I suspect that you're going to be feeling this a little bit too. I have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I still do. I suffer from it, not every day, but occasionally. And it's like, oh my God, like what? Why am I the person? Why do they think that I'm the cool one? Why do they think I have the answer? Like, am I qualified to do this? I remember the first big event that I put on. It was a big 3-day event in Denver. And we had like about 250, 270 in the room, in this ballroom in a hotel. And it was all me for 3 days. And,
wow.
I was getting mic'd up in the back and they were playing like my, Beyonce song da, 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 to run up on stage.
Yeah.
And I just remember being back there with my media guy. And I just looked at him. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, no, I'm the car rental girl. I can't go on a stage and like hold somebody's attention and give them anything good for 3 days. These 270 people paid to fly out here to see this. It's like, are you kidding me? I just need to give them all their money back right now and go home and probably just go back to work at Hertz because this is ridiculous.
That's funny. You're right. I do feel that. I think everyone, well, I don't know, maybe not our president, but everyone feels it pretty much. I think that imposter syndrome, I have done the same thing. I've spoken, I've been fortunate enough to be on stage a few times. And right before you go on, you do sort of have this like, what in the heck am I doing? Like, this is crazy, like, I don't know. It's humbling, especially when you have kids and like a dog that goes to the bathroom in the house. Like, I'm cleaning up poop right now. Like, if people could only see me now.
That's why we don't talk about dog training or child rearing, I guess.
Exactly. So I got a question for you. I think you covered this in the book, but I'm just want to get your opinion on this. When people are starting out, and let's just say they've done a few deals and they know they've got like consistent lead flow and things, do you suggest or do you see value in pooling money as opposed to getting like money for a deal, paying that money back, and then going out and getting money for the next deal? You talked a little bit about pooling, or you at least alluded to it in the book. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's fantastic. I think that being able to pool the capital like that from multiple investors really gives you some major efficiencies. So there are a couple of ways that you can do that. The first level and the easiest way is with something that we call a fractionalized note, right? Mm-hmm. So I can have, let's say I'm buying a house and my purchase price is, say it's $100,000. Well, and this is true story, by the way, this is routinely what would happen to me. I'd, have this spreadsheet of private money partners that were working with me. And I'd have in one column, like, this is exactly how much they have. I call it total capacity. And then the next column, like how much we have put to use. So that's how much we have borrowed so far. And then, just what's the next column? It's their total capacity minus what we have on loan, and that equals their current capacity. So the amount of money that they have now to invest with us. And so if a property at that point, when I was actively doing this on residential properties way back in the day, my average price point, my all in that I needed to raise per deal was about $170,000. That was the average.
Okay.
And so I'd go down that list, and if somebody had 170, then I'd call them and say, hey, 170. And they'd be like, I'm in. But then what happened, right, is I went on the list and nobody had 170 anymore. Like, I call it remnant money. Like, one guy would have like 40, one guy would have 30, one guy would have 90, whatever. So they had all this remnant money that I couldn't use because I couldn't find deals that were that cheap. And then they were mad because they had remnant money that wasn't earning money. It wasn't on loan. So it was just sitting there, like, put my money to work. So I came up with this mechanism. It's a fractionalized trust deed. So it just means that the deed has, that is the security for multiple promissory notes. And so I would issue promissory notes to each individual investor equal to the amount that they were putting in. And I could have separate terms. I could have separate rates and everything. So if Bob came, I have a $170,000 deal. If Bob came with 50, then I could give Bob 5%. If Jane came with 100, I could give her maybe 7%. And if somebody, a couple other people kind of brought up the rear, I could do whatever I wanted with them.
Right.
So that's the first level. And that worked really well. But it still wasn't as efficient as it could be, or it could have been at that time. So that's when we went to pooling, and when I put together the fund. The way that you can pool now is just with a fund like that, with a straight up private placement if it's going to be a larger deal, or you can get it done with like a simple LLC by, putting multiple investment partners and yourself in the LLC. They're the members, you're the managing member. There are lots of ways to do it. And I think that when you are working with one pot of money, it becomes a lot easier to coordinate on the front end and the back end, honestly, than if you have to deal with like multiple separate entities on the front, lender entities on the front end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And that's good. That's kind of where I thought you were going with that, but that's great. Because I think that you're right. It gets a little bit cumbersome. And frankly, what I find, and I've done a similar thing, is that my lender sometimes gets tired of like, okay, here's your payoff, note, and then send me another note, and then we'll get what I'm trying to think here, a notary, and we'll get this all set up. It's like all this back and forth paperwork. I've had lenders say, can you just hold it, or can we do something where we don't have to keep doing this back and forth with the documentation? It's exhausting, so. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's all the stuff that you avoid when you can pool it that way, or even put together a small fund. And honestly, that's what happened with my very first private money partner, Rick. His first deal was done and I was getting ready to pay him back. And I was so proud. I wanted to go to, Office Max and get one of those giant checks, like from Publishers Clearinghouse, go to his house. And I was like, oh man, that's gonna be so great. Take a picture of it. It's the first, and I was like all geeked out. And so I didn't do that, by the way, because they were way too expensive. I'm like, $50? You kidding me for a giant check? No way. So anyway, I just met with them. I'm like, meet me. We would meet for coffee. And so I met with them and I'm like, I have, great news. And I, went to give him his payoff and his release of lien and all that stuff. And he put his hands up, like he refused to even take the package. He was like, if you're a robber and you're like, stick him up, like his hands went up like that. And I'm like, what? Here, take it. And he's like, no, I don't want it. He's like, I don't want that money. He goes, you put that money right back to work. Don't give it to me.
That's awesome.
I was like, wow, okay, let's do it again.
That's so great. So, all right. So when we talked about after you're giving the money back, it's a super fun and usually pretty easy meeting. When you're having,
unless they refuse to take it.
Unless they refuse to take the money, but even that is a good problem, right? It's it's weird, but it's not scary. When you're talking to people for the first time, or you're kind of presenting the opportunity to them, you mention in the book the 5 presentation flaws, which are, and we'll just kind of go through them quickly here. Too much detail too soon. We talked about that, right? Just or just puking all over information over them, which I did, and a lot of people do. They feel like the more information you give them, the better, and it's not that. It's not the case. You're going to scare most people. Presentation too vague or convoluted. I did that. No strong call to action. Totally did that. No coolness factor. I definitely did that too, because I thought I had to be super buttoned up. And neediness, right? We cover those in individually, but those are the things that I think probably, if not every person makes, then they're making 4 out of the 5, probably,
Agree.
In that, those are like, really, it's a compensation thing a lot of times. Like, I thought I had to be buttoned up, give them all the information. I was needy, so there was no way I could wash that off. I was just as needy as could be. And my presentation was vague and convoluted, and I was going down rabbit holes, and it didn't make no sense, And the crazy thing was I still was able to raise some money until I got better at that. I raised more money, but like, even doing it poorly, if you're diligent, like, you can get money. But these are the things that everyone does wrong, and you just need to understand. Just like I've had people, and I know you recommend like a 1-page like a mission statement or like a business plan, and kind of like show them that. But I think that's not going to make them lend you money. Like, you will be the thing that makes them lend you money. And then some people are just the type of personality that want some data, so you're going to satisfy that person. But I've had people who I brought a whole like big presentation, like this big thing, and they're like, I don't know what this is. I can't look at this. Like, just tell me what you're doing, So it's surprising how little some people need to loan you money.
It's downright shocking, honestly, sometimes. But yeah, our initial kind of discussions with these potential private money partners, right? You're not going to, again, I mean, it's like how marketers always talk about when you first meet somebody, like, do you ask them out on a date, or do you like say, hey, let's go straight to the honeymoon? It's like, no, like, we just can't like go back and get busy. I just met you. I don't know even what you're doing right now. I need more detail, and we'll get to that later over time. But this is just a way to kind of gauge interest, right? Yep. And so when we walk in and we just kind of, I'll go back to that phrase. It's gross, but it's so appropriate. Word vomit all over somebody, then the more we talk, the more opportunity we give ourselves to talk that person out of investing in our deal.
Yep.
Right. Because what that does is it kind of puts them on the defensive, and then they start looking for, okay, well, if this person like is really, really trying to sell me this hard on this thing, what's the catch?
Yep.
Right. And I agree with you, like that 1-page kind of, mini business plan, you don't even really need that. I mean, I've just kind of walked into places, and the Mexican restaurant, the name that escaped you before, it's La Loma. That's where I raised the majority of my private money back in the day. And we used to walk into that Mexican restaurant, and I always go, do you smell that? And people would say, what? It's money. Do you smell the money? Right? And it smelled like cheese and tacos. But,
exactly.
Smelled like money to me still. Yeah, you just want to lead with that value statement, and then if somebody says, "Wow, well, how do you do that?" then you just explain as succinctly as you can exactly how you do that. And if you have a deal, just kind of give them some high-level details about the deal. And then if they're like, "All right, let me learn more," then you set up a time to meet. Right.
Yeah.
And then in the meeting is when you're really probably going to go over more of the details and the terms of the deal, the interest rate, the maturity of the note, and the payback, and all those details that they need to know, and have them sign your agreement, and you're off to the races. So it's really a super simple process, but you're right. Those are the 5 ways that you can completely sabotage your deal. Or the likelihood that you're going to get private money.
Yeah.
I should say at the end of the day, it's a numbers game, right? So when you made the comment, and I love that you did that, look, even though I was making all these mistakes, I still managed to raise some capital, despite, these mistakes. Yep. It's true, because you were diligent about it, and you were probably pitching and making a lot of presentations.
Yep.
It's just that the successful presentations will start to increase and outpace the unsuccessful presentations as you start to layer in the effectiveness and eliminate some of these mistakes that you're making.
Yep. And combined with a lot of things we've already talked about that you've mentioned in the book, just putting yourself out there, like, don't hide what you're doing. Like, the more people you let know and the more people you talk to about what you're doing, the air quotes luckier you're going to get with people who are interested in investing with you. And like you said, the more you do these meetings and these investor meetings and you relax a little bit and just, wipe the stink of neediness off of you because you've raised a little bit of money. That's the thing too. It's interesting. Sometimes the more money you raise, the easier it is. And it's not because necessarily you've gotten so great at it. It's because you stop needing it, and it's like as soon as you stop needing it so dang bad, it'll come a little easier. It's just hard to not feel like it's hard. I used to say this. It's hard to not project that neediness when I am needy. Like I need the money, like how do I stop projecting something that is just oozing out of my pores?
It's like you're not Robert De Niro. You can't act your way out of it.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it's a good point. And I think that there's a deeper level that we can take that specific point to. And you said that, you kind of eliminate that neediness when you have enough capital that you don't need it anymore.
Yep.
But I would kind of go a little bit further than that and say, for the new person, they're probably thinking, oh, well, great. Well, now I'm going to be needy until I have a lot of money and I don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And then it's like the problem people have with banks. They only want to loan you money when you don't need it. Right.
Right.
So what I always say is, the other big question that I get is, when should I raise private money? Should I raise it after I get the deal signed or before I have the deal? And most people are really hesitant to raise private capital before they actually have a deal, because then they're like, well, I won't even have any specifics or anything to talk to them about. But here's the thing that I discovered. When I started raising capital before I actually got a deal, the neediness automatically went away.
Yeah. Because
what happens is if you raise capital only after you sign a purchase agreement, then the clock is ticking on your earnest money, right?
Yep.
You got typically 14 days in order to pull together the funding.
Yep.
Well, now you're running around town like a chicken with your head cut off, right? And there's no way you're going to be able to not act needy, because you're going to be covered in neediness. You are needy.
Totally. And maybe worse, you have 14 days to pull together funding, but a lot of times you only have 24 or 48 hours before that you can just get out, before you have to give them the earnest money, right?
Yeah,
so you're putting
Sure.
down that earnest money, and for some people that's might as well be $1 billion. That's all they have. So
True.
That's great. You mentioned too a book called Pitch Anything, and I've not read that book, but I'm going to now. But in the book, one of the things I pulled out that you talked about was pricing. Can you explain what that means a little? What pricing is?
Absolutely. So Oren Klaff, he's a friend of mine, and he basically does what we do, but he does it as a hired gun for companies, right, outside of the real estate space. And so he's somebody that people hire to go and raise private money, and that's what we call it. We call it private money in real estate. They call it investment capital, right, on the VC side, venture capital side. And so that's what he does. He's a hired gun to do that. And he wrote a really great book, as you just mentioned. And one of the concepts in the book that he talks about pricing basically means that we need to understand that the prize isn't the investor, right? So when we're pitching someone, the prize isn't them. Right? Because you kind of alluded to this earlier. What do they bring to the table? The only thing they bring to the table is money.
Yep.
And if there's one thing we know about money, we may try not to believe it because the scarcity mindset is so ingrained in us. But if there's one thing that we truly do know about money, it's ubiquitous, right? Look at our government. We don't have enough money. Fine, we'll just print more. There's always money.
Yep.
And there's always going to be more money. There's plenty of money, and there is way more money out there wanting to invest in real estate than people wanting to actively invest in real estate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. 100%.
So they want the advantage, but they don't want to do the work. Kind of like me. They want to be passive investors now.
Yeah.
So that's when Oren made that comment and, wrote about that in the book. It was just like, oh man, this dovetails so nicely with what I teach. And we talked about that. I remember he was in New York and I was in Denver, and we were supposed to have a call, and he was stuck in a taxi, and we were on this massive text string where we were dissecting this specific concept.
Yeah.
And it's just so powerful. He's like, the thing that he teaches is that we're the prize, right?
Yep.
That the private money partner, the potential investor that's sitting across from us, that's not the prize. Us, we're the ones that are sitting across from this money that needs an opportunity to earn more money. And as far as that money is concerned, we are the prize. And we need to start acting like it.
Totally. Yep. It's a mind shift, but it's something you have to do. I think it's super important. You also talked about the value of one investor and what that means over time. I think in your examples, like you borrow $300,000, but then over time you make, $1 million, depending on how long you use it and what you're using it for. But just not thinking of someone in terms of, well, they have $100,000, they're worth $100,000 to me. Over time, if you treat them right, if you do what you say you're going to do, if you're diligent and you create that relationship, that one investor over time can be 2 or 3 or 10x what they initially invested with you. And I think that was super powerful. Even for me, somebody who's borrowed a lot of money and been in this a while, it's good to hear that again because it's so true, to not let these people become a commodity or to treat them in a way that would make them want to just, I'm going to go somewhere else. Like that once you find them and you bring them in and you treat them right and you have that relationship, the value monetarily that they can bring you over time in your business is several times, what they initially invest with you.
Absolutely. And it's such a great concept. And I'm glad you picked up on that. And it has to do, if we kind of zoom out and we just talk about it in terms of just business, right? Not even specific to real estate. It has to do with customer acquisition versus customer retention.
Yeah.
Right. So these private money partners, they're our customers, right? They're our customers. They just are. So we have to treat them as such. And I always say, if you have a retail store or another business, I'm sure agree with me. It's a heck of a lot easier to keep your customers, right, than it is to go out and find new ones. It's a heck of a lot cheaper too. So when we're talking about raising private capital, one of the things for me personally that I wanted to avoid was having to go out and just pitch endlessly and always have to come up with new investment partners. Because I didn't really want to do that. What I wanted to do was get a really solid core of really responsive private money partners that I could work with over the long term. Because I don't want to have to go out and acquire new private money partners. I would rather do what I need to do to retain my private money partners, because then you don't have to go out looking for a ton of them. You can get done what you need with I did everything that I needed to do in my active real estate investing career with maybe a total of 12 or 15 private money partners max. Yeah. And people are usually surprised to hear that. When we go back to the point that I made about the power of one, Rick was my very first private money partner, and he's the example that I give in the book. $300,000 was the total capacity that he had. So if we break this down in the example, let's say that my all-in price per deal was $150, just to make the numbers even. Mm-hmm. Well, that means that I could do 2 deals at a time, just with Rick's money. And at that time, I was doing flips. And so the average time that it took me, to get out of a flip was just about 4.5 months, right? Yeah. So let's just round up and call it 6. So now, instead of, I can do 2 deals simultaneously, and then I can flip that money and do that twice each year. So now I'm doing 4 flips per year with just Rick's money. Yep. And if my average profit per flip is $25,000, now my total profit with just Rick's money, one private money partner, 4 flips, that's 1 a quarter. I've made $100,000. That's a 6-figure business right there. Right. Yep. You keep him for 10 years. Boom. Congrats. You just profited you made $1 million off of Rick's $300,000. Yep.
Absolutely. It's a huge concept, because you're right. I think people go, I need to get all kinds. I need dozens and dozens of these investors. No, you don't. You really don't. You just don't. So that was huge. Even I think everyone needs that message. Everyone needs to be reminded of that again, because I think sometimes we're in a turn and burn society where it's like, I got this investor, I use them for this deal, and I forgot to communicate. I just send his paperwork a little bit late. I'll just go find more. It's like, no, man, just cultivate him. It's like you said, the cost of acquisition versus retention, and it's always easier to retain than to acquire. So, huge good stuff. One thing you mentioned too, and this is kind of goes along with what we just said, is if you drop the ball, I'm paraphrasing you, but if you drop the ball, you make a mistake, admit you're wrong. Just don't don't try to be this I never make mistake person. And then, at some point you have to come back and tell them after the fact what you did, or that you maybe covered it up, or you weren't being totally honest because you felt like you weren't going to look intelligent or professional or whatever. Like, people appreciate just knowing the truth. And I think a lot of times, even if you make a mistake, if you own up to it and you tell them how you're going to fix it, and then you fix it, like, your credibility with them and the loyalty factor will skyrocket, as opposed to what you might be afraid is going to happen.
Oh my God, it totally does. You're spot on. I mean, the worst that we imagine never happens.
Right.
It just never does. And because we've wasted all that time and energy and honestly emotion worrying about it, we've already experienced it.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're thinking about the worst that could happen, congrats. That's the worst that could happen.
Yeah.
Just you thinking about it and having that experience.
Yeah.
So I always say communicate quickly, good news, and communicate even more quickly the bad news.
Yep.
Right. Because that's what's going to keep you out of trouble. And be honest. I worked with this guy, Naveen. He came to me. This guy owned like a subdivision in Florida. It was something crazy, like 135 townhomes or something.
Wow.
And he was from India, and he had raised all this capital from his Indian relatives. And it was right after the time that everything crashed. And so a lot of stuff, especially at that place in that area in Florida at that specific time, lost maybe half of its value, right? His total portfolio. So he was having some difficulty making these debt payments, and he was very concerned about what was going to happen, and very concerned about not being able to pay people back. And he had already started to kind of fall behind on some things, repayment to his people. And so he came to me and he's like, what can I do? He goes, and he was just broken, just even his body language, just looking at him, it's like his shoulders were slumped and he just looked gray. And I could tell this just was just weighing on him like crazy. And I'm like, well, what have you told them? And he's like, I haven't told him anything, and some of the people who are saying, well, where's my payment? I'm not answering their phone calls. And I was like, oh God, that's like the worst thing that you could do. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, here's what we're going to do. You're going to like reach out to each of them, but you're going to do it in a specific way. It's going to be kind of like a good news, bad news situation, because at the end of the day, he needed more capital in order to get his portfolio right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so he's like, I just don't know where I'm going to be able to get more capital, because now nobody will loan any more to me because I've already behaved badly with them.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, long story short, not only are you going to communicate what's been going on to your existing private money partners, as part of that communication, you're going to ask them for even more money for your project. And you should have seen his face when I told him this. He was just like looking for the door, like where can I leave? How can I leave? Where can I run?
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's do it. So we did it in such a way, we communicated it effectively, and we communicated it positively, and we were honest with the people, and the people were so receptive to that. I think out of like all these people that invested with him, there was only like maybe one dude that was like, forget it. Yeah, I want my money back right now. And then we had so much extra capital. We're like, fine, pay him off, right? We'll work with the people who want to be here, who are happy to be here. And it goes back to exactly what I said at the top of this call. The people, if they know what's going on, if they know you, they like you, and they trust you, it's their innate nature to want to help you.
Yep.
So we just invited everybody to be part of the solution, and they loved it.
Yep. That's awesome. That's huge.
And so now, long story short, his portfolio, it's a family real estate business that he's turned over to his adult children. And they also started up a property management company so that they didn't, have to pay a third party to do that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what do you really want to do with the rest of your life? He goes, I want to build a meditation center and basically be the next Deepak Chopra. And so I'm like, do that. So that's what he does now.
Go, man.
I'm like, right on,
Nice.
right?
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, when I was reading your book, and that was back, I don't know, 4 years ago, I think, when you wrote it. Since then, like, what are you doing now that you're excited about? Like, what types of projects are you working on that people could or should know about, or that you're just excited about in general?
So, we left, I had a real estate training and coaching business for many years, and I closed that about 2 years ago. And I just mainly did it because I just was a little bit tired of real estate. I didn't want to do it like professionally anymore. Obviously am still doing it, right? I do still invest, and obviously I have a nice investment portfolio, but it wasn't what I wanted to make my business anymore.
Yeah.
So closed the business, and we essentially sold everything in Colorado, and we realized one of our dreams. We moved out here to Southern California. We live just outside of Palm Springs. And so
Are you jealous that I live in Michigan?
I am not jealous. In fact.
All right. Darn it. No one ever is.
Hey, if we were having this conversation in the summertime, yes, because you guys have some of the most gorgeous lake country I think I've ever seen.
That's true.
And I live in the desert, so I would be very jealous of you. But in the winter, not so much.
Yeah, this time of the year, it sort of sucks. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
No, you're fine. But, so I'm like, for me, I kind of took a step back, and instead of saying, well, how much money do I want to make, or what do I want to make my next career or my next venture? I took a step back and I said, what do I want my environment and my lifestyle to be? And I wasn't happy in Colorado for some of the same reasons that I'm not jealous of you in Michigan. Cold winters.
Yep.
And, these hips don't lie. They are getting older. And if I want to maintain my ability to play tennis for a long, long time, I need to have some warmer bones. And so we moved out here to Southern California, and I knew that I wanted to do something still in investing. But what I like to do is analyze stocks and other types of income producing investments. So I like to be able, now that I have money, to put my money out into the world so that it earns money.
Gotcha.
And on a 100% passive basis. And so I have a little strategy for doing that. And we put together a little side business called the Income Investors. And, it's a little membership site that people can join. And we talk about our style of investing. In a nutshell, it kind of boils down to, we're milking our cash cows as opposed to slaughtering our cash cows.
Yeah.
Is kind of the premise there. So it's the Income Investors, and it's a lot of fun what we're doing there, building these passive income portfolios. Outside of that, I'm also I'm a serial entrepreneur. I get a lot of opportunity that comes my way, and I enjoy marketing, and I love writing. I've always loved writing. And so I also am a part owner in an online-based content marketing agency. Okay. Where we work with, actually, we have a lot of real estate investor clients that we work with, putting together like email campaigns and webinars and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. So
What's that called?
Still kind of doing some stuff like behind the scenes. It's called The Squad Agency. The Squad.
Okay.
So it's thesquad.agency. And so, we've had guys that I used to work with in the business for a really long time say, we're busy doing deals, but we know that we need to effectively communicate with our customers, our private money partners, our buyers, our sellers, our wholesalers, all those people. So, can you help us do that? And so we do put together,
nice
email campaigns and stuff like that. So,
Very
but
cool.
Mostly tennis.
Okay, mostly tennis. Fair enough.
Not gonna lie.
No, that's good. That's good. Listen, you got to a place in your life where you can do that, and that's huge. None of us. I don't think anybody says I want to go into real estate because you said in your book, like, I just love real estate so much. Even if I had the ability to have free time and spend it with my friends and family, nah, I'm just gonna stay. I'm gonna flip another house and get in there and do it. Like, we all sort of, I shouldn't say everybody, but I think most people sort of do this so they don't have to do this, at some point. So
look, if real estate investing is the vehicle that we've chosen, right, as our path to wealth, then that's fine. Stay on that path until wealth is realized. And that's what I did. It's like, all right, I was on the path, did everything I needed to do. I reached the end of the road as far as I was concerned. And then I wanted a different type of life for myself. I didn't want to work as hard. I didn't want to do active investing. I wanted it to be completely passive because that's what fits best with my lifestyle.
Yep.
So
that's awesome.
I just kind of flipped it. Instead of, I spent a lot of years chasing the dollars and just setting these arbitrary revenue goals and trying to find ways to hit those, and then it's just not fun. You lose the passion, you lose the focus. So for me to zoom out and say, instead of how much money do I want to make, it's what kind of a life do I want to live? And then I can work on stuff that I really get excited about that puts great value out into the world. Yep. To me, that's way more fun.
That's awesome. I love it. It's a good place to end. Listen, I said it before, I said it in the beginning, and I'll say it again. One of the guests that have been most excited and looking forward to talking to, because what you've done for people is not theoretical, it's real. I've seen it. I've talked to people personally, shook their hand, talked to them, and I know them personally who've used just the information in your book to transform their business, to raise money, and put them on a path like you're talking about, where they're creating wealth that's changing their life. And for you to do that and be not only that, like a super cool person on top of it, and one of the funnest interviews I've ever done, like, thank you very much for that. And I know I speak for a lot of people when I say thank you very much for putting that out in the world.
Oh, Mike, wow. You just gave me goosebumps. You're going to make me tear up a little bit here. That was very sweet of you to say. And I absolutely appreciate you and what you're doing and what you're putting out into the world and how you're leading folks. And I'm just pleased to be here and to, hopefully we've delivered some value to your listeners. And anytime, man. This has been a fun one. Anytime you want to do it again, just let me know. Good.
I might take you up on that. I appreciate that very, very much. And I'm going to let you go with that. But again, thank you for being here. Thanks for doing everything you do. I'm going to, normally I let people give out their information if you want to get a hold of her, but I don't know that that's where you're at right now. I mean, you have things out there where people can find you if they want to, unless there's something you really want to give people, but I'm thinking not.
No.
Okay.
I mean, look, hey,
that's so cool. That's a coolest answer I've ever heard.
Get the book.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Just go to Amazon and get the book, because you're right. I mean, that's really, it's all you need. And Google me if you need something else.
Exactly. Like go real, like investigative. If you want to find her, you can find her. Go to Southern California and just start trolling tennis courts.
Yeah, just go to Mission Hills Country Club, and I'm usually on court 5.
Oh, boom. So. There you go. Wow, that was very specific. She just made it easy for you.
Go.
Again, she made it easy. Go out and get the book, Getting the Money. It is the book for raising money, period. No exceptions. It's everything you need. Go get it, and you'll find out exactly what I found out too. So thanks again, Susan. I appreciate your time, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks, Mike. You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Wow, what a fun interview I had with Susan. Hopefully it came through what a cool person she is, and how really just absolutely like you and I, right? She started in real estate a long time ago, and she needed money for her deals, and she saw a need, figured out how to do it, figured out what the best practice was, and put it into a book, and has helped thousands of people and raised, like she said, over $400 million. And that's just what she knows. Those are just the people who have kind of reached out and said, hey, I raised $1 million, I raised $2 million, I raised $10 million. And she sort of informally documented that. I suspect she's helped people raise a lot more than that. So this was an interview that I really wanted to bring to you as part of my commitment to bringing you content, interviews, information, tactics, and strategies that are being used to grow a business and grow your business, and what you can apply today that is going to be impactful for you. So I hope you enjoy this interview. Guys, getting the money, man, that's where it starts. You need to have money for your deals, and Susan can absolutely help you get there with her book. So go out and get it and utilize it and start growing that business. There's really no way you can do that until you just get out there and start, right? We talk about it all the time. That's what the show is. It's Just Start Real Estate. It's called that because you have to just start. Get out there. Start raising money. Start finding deals. Grow your business. Realize your dreams. Guys, until next time, get after it. We'll talk to you soon.